problem for Democrats is not Joe Biden. The problem for Democrats is the policies of the Democratic Party. Voters are moving to the Republican Party, particularly Hispanic voters, whom the Democrats thought were going to be in their camp for generations, because of the policies of the Democratic Party. Voters in San Francisco threw out their district attorney not because of Joe Biden, but because of the left-wing progressive policies bankrolled by George Soros, which simply don't work. They're about to do the same in Los Angeles with our own district attorney, George Gascon. And they're moving to the right. Latino voters just elected a Latina Republican in a border constituency in Texas, which hadn't happened for decades. And you're seeing that because people are just fed up with Democratic policies. So there's this idea that Joe Biden isn't being aggressive enough on climate change, aggressive enough in defending abortion rights, aggressive enough on all these left-wing priorities. What the Democrats don't get is that nobody cares about that stuff. And in fact, a lot of it is offensive to voters. Voters are worried about inflation. They're worried about crime. They're worried about education. They're worried about health care. Democrats aren't talking about those things anymore. They're talking about these wedge cultural issues, the transgender pronouns, all the stuff that means nothing to anybody. They're talking about climate change when Americans are paying record prices at the pump. Gas prices have come back a little bit, but there's no guarantee they're not going to go back up again, especially because production is so low in the United States. These are all the results of explicit choices by the Democratic Party. That does not improve if Joe Biden's out of the picture. If he is replaced, he'll be replaced by someone more left-wing than he is, and that's just going to take the party further down the road that voters are rejecting. So there's a cognitive dissonance in the Democratic Party. They're talking about Joe Biden's age because they feel the midterm election verdict is coming. They're trying to avoid it. They're trying to avoid defeat in 2024. The presidential election is basically already underway. You got candidates visiting Iowa, New Hampshire, and so forth. The Democrats know that they're in trouble, but they're not yet reckoning with the fact that they are the reason they're in trouble. They keep running down the same failed path. And Joe Biden is not the problem. In fact, Joe Biden is probably the one thing that is restraining the party from doing even worse.
I see different names being touted as potential successors. One name that baffles me, he was a candidate in the primaries, in the presidential primaries last time around. He loves that nickname, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who was like a McKinsey business consultant who actually worked for a Canadian company that was that paid a massive fine for bread price fixing. This Pete Buttigieg is an interesting and unusual character. I think he's awful as a candidate, but I hear him touted all the time. I feel like he's really out of touch, as you would expect from a McKinsey management consultant. Here he is the other day saying the problem is not high energy prices. It's with Americans who just won't get on board with Teslas or whatever. Here he is talking about transitioning to clean energy. Take a quick look.
I'm still astonished that some folks, and I felt this, I was testifying in Congress yesterday, some folks seem to really struggle to let go of the status quo.
We've heard that same thing in Canada. Our own finance minister says, yeah, prices are high. That's why we all need to go green. I don't know if that language works in 2022. I just, what's the alternative? Buy an $80,000 Tesla? I think Pete Buttigieg is an awful choice for a successor, but he's awful on policy, like you say.
Well, let me deal with Buttigieg as a candidate first, and then I'll talk about the issue of the electric cars that he's trying to push. I have covered politics for a long time. I've been around politicians for a long time. I've never been as unimpressed in person with a politician as I was with Pete Buttigieg. On stage, he looks very handsome, very polished. In person, he looks very diminished. And he does not have the charisma that attracts people to him. His handlers try to keep him away from the press. He ran away literally from our reporters in the spin room after every debate. He never came to the spin room to talk to reporters extemporaneously, only for setup interviews with MSNBC. He has something fake about him. The Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party has always hated him. And I don't think he strikes many Americans as being authentic. There are people who like him and find him to be very intelligent, very charming, and so forth. He attracted a lot of former Elizabeth Warren supporters. After Elizabeth Warren's candidacy looked like it was going nowhere. So there's a kind of appeal he has, I think, to suburban women and some of the more liberal parts of the gentry, you might say. But he's been completely ineffective as transportation minister. He was AWOL during the cargo crisis and only belatedly explained he had been on paternity leave. So he and his husband decided to have twins in the middle of doing one of the most important jobs in the country. That's something you can choose to do. You understand a married couple in the ordinary course of events might have a pregnancy that's unplanned or unexpected, but they did this deliberately while he is serving in the cabinet. There's no particular rush. Neither of them has a biological clock that's ticking. So they decided to do this. He's all about image. My wife once explained to me the difference between people who manage down, that is, they manage their team, they look for results, they look for achievements, and people who manage up, the people who always try to impress the boss, the people who are always concerned about their next promotion. Pete Buttigieg is very good at managing up. He moves from one job to another without doing any of them particularly well. He likes to be called Mayor Pete, but he was mayor in Indiana. He's just transferred his residence to Michigan. I don't know exactly why. Michigan's sort of a swing state, so maybe he has presidential ambitions in mind. But he's basically a fraud, a phony, a careerist who is not doing a very good job as transportation secretary. We've got a baby formula shortage in this country he's not addressing. We've got massive transportation problems in this country, canceled flights, all kinds of problems on the trains. He's got a lot of money to spend now. They gave him over $1 trillion with this infrastructure bill. But, he's just not very good at managing anything.
What you just saw was an excerpt from my nightly show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every weekday, I do a monologue. Usually it's about half an hour. Then I interview an interesting guest, and then we read my hate mail or my fan mail, whichever is more fun. It's only available behind a paywall, though. That's how we pay our bills here at Rebel News. We don't take a dime from Justin Trudeau. But the good news is it's only $8 a month, about half the price of Netflix. And in addition to my nightly show, you also get weekly shows from 4 other friends here at Rebel News. So you're getting 36 shows a month just for $8. I think it's worth it. And even if you're not quite sure, do it anyways, because we rely on viewers like you to keep us free and independent. I promise you I'll never take a dime from Trudeau. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com and click subscribe. Thanks.